Welcome to the Racing Pigeon International Podcast. We talk about everything racing pigeons, the latest news, results, events, and interviews from around the world.
Welcome to the Pigeon World Podcast, and today I'm pleased to be interviewing John Angwin from Angwin Family Lofts, based in Cornwall. And I've known John now for a few years, and I wanted to get him on and interview him because what he's got as his stock pigeons are tremendous. He's winning in the UK, and also his pigeons have started scoring in one-loft races quite well. So welcome, John.
Thank you, Mark.
So we'll get straight into it. Who was your inspiration? How did you get into pigeons? I know your father is...
Yeah, I mean, Dad's always been my inspiration in everything throughout life. He's 81 now and his health isn't the best, but he's still involved a little bit. I started in racing pigeons in about 1974 with my dad taking an interest, but he always wanted to push the scraper onto me. So save him cleaning out, I had to do all the cleaning out. And I always wanted my own loft, and he'd never let me. He didn't have enough room for me to race my own pigeons. So we always raced as Angwin family. Angwin and Son back then. It wasn't until about 2004 we changed it to Angwin Family Pigeons because of my children getting a little bit interested in it. So yeah, Dad's been my main inspiration. But the last few years, or the last 15 years, I wanted to go more sprint, where Dad was always dedicated for distance pigeons.
Did your dad do his fair share of winning back in the day with the distance?
He did, yeah, he did. You mean he started off back in the 70s with some Jansons and some Busharts, and then the Busharts outperformed the Jansons in the end, and we went predominantly with the Eagles and Busharts. And yeah, they raced really well for Dad across the water and inland. So
moving forward to now, so you started in 74 yourself with an interest. You've been flying, but and throughout those years, but what you've got now is very different to back then. When did you start what I would term taking things very seriously from a stock point of view? What you've got now, the stock you've got now is amazing, sprint stock. When did that start coming together for you?
That took a lot of planning. I was working as a property developer, and I wanted to get out of it. You know, going to work in the dark, coming home in the dark, not seeing the pigeons. I wanted to get out of it. So 2 or 3 years before I started my stud, I was planning on what I was going to do. And 2017, new young Kittel became available on an auction site. So it was really from 2017, but the planning for it was a couple of years before that. But it was only planning. So from 2017, I started to acquire what I thought was the best that I could afford. I have spent a lot of money on pigeons. It doesn't make them win, but it gets the genetics.
The new young Kittel was the starting point, really, that kicked everything off, acquiring him.
It was. I mean, every year up to that, Dad and myself, we always used to buy in a kit of someone's pigeons, you know, whether it was the Corbmans or Sujans, and race them alongside our Busharts. And nothing could ever outperform the Busharts until it was probably 2016. We brought in some Herreman Cuesters. They were pretty good, although the Busharts were still outperforming them. And then in 2017, we brought in the Van Den Bulcks, and from day one of racing the Van Den Bulcks, they outperformed everything. So I've still got the old original Eagles and Busharts here that I don't breed from them. It's just nostalgic, you know. Still got the old bloodlines here, the pure Eagles and Busharts. But now it's mainly Bulks, Fulio, Herman, Stefan Lambrechts, Patrick Briox.
With the Busharts, Busharts were one of my. I had Busharts and Kirkpatricks many years ago when I started. They were my What distance did you get the bush arch back then flying at? The best
For us, out to, well, we had them out to 560 mile, because flying across to France for us is 140 mile of water across to France, because I'm only 2 mile away from the coast, and a straight line from here to, say, Nantes, you've got quite a wide bit of channel. But to perform well out as far as 380 mile descents, we never won tarbs or anything like that. Distance racing is a difficult game to get into. I've always said that a distance man can sprint or convert to sprint, but a sprint man struggles to convert to distance. I mean, there's people out there that can prove me wrong, and there's always going to be those few people that can do both. But predominantly, sprint men are sprint men, they're not distance men, and to change over is very difficult.
I was saying last week when I was coming back from Belgium, I took the ferry, and it still amazes me, even with just the 28 miles between Dover Calais, that when you look at it, it's quite a clear day going over. It wasn't so great coming back, but it still amazes me when you see halfway point, you can see both coastlines, and it just amazes me still that they cross it like they do. There's still a wonder in that for me, that after all these years of being involved, it still amazes me they cross it like that. And for you, that's even more. Like you say, that's 140 mile if they come straight line.
Pigeons don't like crossing water, whether it's the channel or a lake. They don't like crossing water. We've tried it down here, training our pigeons from the Lizard Point, which they've then got to come across Penzance Bay, and they just won't do it. They just won't come out of the basket and head straight for home. They're only 15 mile from home, 10 mile from home, but it's all water. They'll always go around the coast. I mean, I proved that many a time with the old tracker that I used to have. I used to have a dead tracker that you would download it when you got the pigeons back, and you could see their exact route from A to B. And they would never come across that bay. So it does take a good pigeon to come across any decent stretch of water.
So your passion's sprint, really.
It is.
And you've done your fair share of winning down there in your own right, outside of any stud results, as I'll say. What do you think the most memorable? What's the pinnacle for you been so far racing in your own right with these pigeons?
It's multiple drops. I love to see multiple drops, and that's what I aim for, a loft performance. Probably our best result in the Cornish Combine was taking the first 10 in the Cornish Combine. It's never been beaten, but it never will be beaten now, because we're only allowed to have 5 pigeons in the result per loft. But there's there's one person that matched it, but that's a record that'll never be beaten now. They were good days to see multiple pigeons drop. If you send 40 pigeons and getting 20 pigeons on the drop, as a sprint racer, that's what you're aiming for. Your loft is all at the same performance. You haven't got one pigeon that's just a star. You want them all to be stars.
Yeah, and that's what makes the difference between the types of racing, 20 on the drops. Sight to behold.
Yeah, and then you haven't got so much problem with a pigeon landing on the roof or something like that. If you've got 20 pigeons on the drop, we only need 5 to record, because that's the amount of positions we're allowed to have in the combine. You only need 5 of those on the drop, to go straight down onto the landing board. And if you've got a bigger drop, quite often most of them will land straight on the landing board.
Yeah. And so New Young Kittel started it, and then I remember when we first started speaking, actually one of the first times we spoke, it turned out you were bidding on a pigeon that I was bidding on as well. I think that was one of the first times we spoke.
Was I? Did you win it or did I win it?
No, I'll let you win it because you got one more.
Sorry.
And, very nicely, you actually sent a pigeon to Zandy out of it.
All right.
Probably don't remember that, but is
No.
a double granddaughter here of Den 2000, which
Oh, I remember. Yeah, I remember the
yeah.
pigeon.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
beautiful.
but you've basically accumulated. I mean, New Young Kittel in his own right is the star pigeon from a point of view of the results he's produced for people.
Yeah.
Just tell people the results that New Young Kittel has
I have
racked up.
and in front of me, but we're now in fourth. Yeah, we're now in the fourth generation from New Young Kittel of winners. So you don't have to go. You don't get it very often. There's a few pigeons that I know of that have bred winners in 5-6 generations, but it doesn't happen very often. And New Young Kittel's going to be one of those, I'm sure. You don't always have to go that close to the tree because all of these winners are a grandchild of something. So with New Young Kittel, if someone buys a grandchild of New Young Kittel, it's still been proven that their New Young Kittel's great grandchildren can win. And these pigeons don't come along very often.
No. I mean, it is a numbers game. He's had a lot of. Well, he hasn't had that many children of him racing, but he's definitely had a lot of grandchildren racing out there. A lot, yeah. It's all relative, but he's had the years to prove himself. But it's also a conversation I've had with others, namely Maurice O'Donnell, who said you don't necessarily, if it's the right bloodlines of pigeons, them champions will come. A new champion that didn't necessarily have champion parents. It might have been great grandparents, what have you. So he's one of them pigeons that is done that, and he's done it with many hens as well. It's definitely, obviously the hens you're putting into are great, well-bred pigeons, but he seems to do well with pretty much whatever he's paired to. I know one of the results that you had this year in the Premier, one of your pigeons won the Premier, didn't it?
UK Premier.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was from Rambo. So New Young Kittels have scored in one-loft races, but also Rambo's this year, paired to an old Hopkins line that we've got, an old Ray and Hopkins. I've only got a few of them, but they make a really good cross. I've got a few in my stock loft of children that have raced direct from New Young Kittel. So in 2019, I raced 15 pigeons from New Young Kittel direct from him. And the very first race of the Youngbird season in 2019, one of his sons won. And out of that 15, the first year I stopped 2 pigeons, so I had 13 left. And after year 3, I still had 11 out of the 15 left. So, and that's 3 years of racing, although I stopped 2 pigeons in the first year. One of them was 6th Open NFC, 5,000 odd birds. So that was another cross, and that's what I found with New Young Kittel and the Bulks, because it's not just about New Young Kittel. I've got other pigeons as well that have produced winners. They cross with a lot of different strains. They do cross well. I predominantly cross my New Young Kittel lines with the Leo Heremans because I found that cross really worked well, the Bulk and the Leo Herman. I know the Van Den Bulcks have already got Leo Hermans in them because the Van Den Bulcks are made up of a few different strains. Dirk would put winner to winner, champion to champion. So you have got a few different strains or a few different people's pigeons in Dirk's blood. But they cross well with a lot of different pigeons. I've even crossed them with a Jan Arden, the pigeon that was 6th Open NFC. That pigeon is a Van Den Bulck cross Jan Arden from Stephen Leslie Wright.
Wow.
And that was a
I mean, I'm lucky enough that you've loaned me one of them, same way bred as the UK Premier winner this year, which I'm looking forward to, and I'm going to do exactly what you've just been talking about. He's going to go. He's a great cock, which, as I say, I'm very pleased and thankful that you've let me loan him for the year. But he's going to go to some one-loft pigeons. He's going to go into some of Morris O'Donnell pigeons, and I'd be really interested to see what happens. And also, you said about like the bulks. So the winner of the Golden Algarve race this year was 25% bulk. So there's definitely something there that the bulks. There's a lot of, you've had other successes in the UK as well with your pigeons and in one lofts. So certainly in the UK, the bulks have got the chance to compete on any level in one loft races, which we'll talk about more one loft races in a little while. But yeah, the crossing is, one, we know there's no such thing as a pure pigeon anyway, but for sprint racing, it's perhaps a little bit different. But like you said, the bulks were a mix of the best pigeons anyway. So this concept of keeping pigeons pure it's not done on the continent. They'll swap pigeons all day and every year.
Yeah.
So,
and if you're breeding pigeons in a communal loft, you can't always guarantee the pairing.
No. That Hopkins hen shows to be really, I'm really pleased to see. I'm going to be keen to see what happens this year. But like you said, you haven't got many of them, but it certainly seems to be a winning pairing, that one. And it was nice from my point of view. It was nice to see your lines winning the Premier. So practically now you've got really good pigeons. I know you keep expanding your stock lofts.
It's in progress now. Another 30 foot, like 6 foot. Not to expand the amount of pigeons, is to expand the room that the pigeons have got. Overcrowding is a big problem. I don't like overcrowding pigeons, and the extension this time is mainly for single breeding boxes. So I've got more single breeding boxes to guarantee the parentage.
Yeah, we were talking about that last week, and you were giving me some advice on that. But what you've also done is you've successfully managed to implement a bull system that works for New Young Kittel, and probably others, but I know you've been doing it with New Young Kittel. And it's always fascinated me, because when you've got a pigeon like that, you need to test him with as many different hens as you can. Just briefly explain how you do that, if you would, for anybody that's interested.
There's lots of ways that I've done it. Probably the easiest way to do a bull system with a cock is to have your pairs. Say you've got a section with 12 boxes in, pair them up, let them have a round of eggs. As soon as they're like 20 days old, take the hen away and let the cock finish them off. As soon as the section's empty of all hens, then put the hens back into one side of the section, obviously with food and water on, and leave her in there. Take her out once a day and put her in another section with a bullcock. So the only access that hen has got to a cock is the bullcock. As soon as the hen lays her second egg, open up the divider between the two. The cock then, which is now the foster cock, will immediately go in and sit those eggs because he thinks there is. So that way you could have 12 pairs, all half brothers and sisters. So in one breeding season, you could have 24 pigeons if they all hatch, all half brothers and half sisters, to test the cock. Doesn't have to be, it could be a new cock that you've got come in. You want to test him in one season. 24 pigeons should be able to tell you whether that cock could produce winners or no. He should have a third of them that are scoring well. Even if it's less than a third, is he good enough to go on the bull system? I don't think he is. So that's one way you can do a bull system. The way that I like to do the bull system, I've got a section with 3 boxes in. So I put 3 hens in the boxes, and the cock has a third of the day with each hen. As soon as the hen lays her second egg, I'll take those eggs away, put 2 pot eggs underneath them, and foster those eggs out something else that's laid at the same time. You can do it within a day or two each other, and they'll hatch them as their own. The hen then sits those eggs for another couple of days, and then I take the hen out, put her in a resting section, plenty of baths, all the great minerals and everything that she could want. And then as soon as her first lot of eggs have hatched out, it's time then for her to go back into the bullcock. She won't lay straight away, but she should lay within 10 days. And I normally take 3 rounds like that, where the hen doesn't rear anything. And then I put her aside, and then maybe at the end of the season, pair her up again to either the bullcock or a different cock and let her rear a round. So you're not taking any more than 4 rounds off of one hen, but she's only reared 1 round herself. That's the way I like to do it. I've had one cock with up to 12 hens a day.
Wow.
It's hard work, but you do get a lot of pigeons from them. I was told once that this person had 56 youngsters from one cock, and I thought, there's no way. There's no way that pigeon can produce 56 youngsters in one season. 56 youngsters is easy to produce in one season from a bullcock, providing you've got plenty of foster parents to take the eggs.
And do you find you have to have the right cock for that, or pretty much any cock you've done it with will do it? Or obviously there's the better cocks than others that can perform at that level.
New young Kittel, well, he's amazing. He'll jump on a hen and tread her within seconds of her going in there. You could then take that hen away if you wanted to.
Yeah.
You know, they'll store the sperm for 2 days. So, you know, catching youngsters is pretty easy with a cock like New Young Kittel. Some cocks perform better than others. Yeah, definitely.
And you've got some new additions in the last 12 months that you're going to be doing this with as well to test.
Yeah. I've got the Blizzard King Kittel pigeons from Flanders collection. I got the Python pigeons from Flanders collection. So, yeah, I mean, New Young Blizzard at the minute, son of Blizzard King Kittel, he's totally unproven at the minute. He's on the bull system now. Everything until March that I get from him will be raced. Everything's got to be raced because he's unproven. So hopefully I can get 20 or 30 pigeons out there racing. I'm not going to race them all myself because we only get 8 young bird races. So at the maximum, I could only have 8 winners. And I'd like to get 10 or 15 winners from him this year if I can. So, yeah, I mean, he's got to prove himself to be able to stay here. I mean, he's a high valued cock. He's got the DNA, but he's got to prove the breed in the wins. Otherwise, he's not any good to anybody.
So will he have next year to do that, or will he have 2 years to prove himself?
He's got to produce something promising in 2024. Yeah, not necessarily winners, but he's got to prove consistent pigeons. Yeah. If he produces consistent pigeons, yes, I will give him another year. But if he doesn't breed anything, which is quite possible in pigeons, you've got to get pigeons into the right hands if you want to get results. So yeah, I'll be sending them out to who I think or consider to be someone that can get the results from them.
Interestingly, who do you think they would be if you care to name any of them, if they wouldn't mind being named?
I wouldn't like to upset anybody because.
All right, we'll leave that one then.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, you've got a hell of a team, and I want to see. We'll talk more about one-off races in a while, but I definitely want to see what else happens in that side of things. What motivates you? What's your motivation in the sport? I mean, I can guess that it's to win as many races as you can, but is there anything moving forward that motivates you, that you're aspiring to achieve and do?
I'm very competitive, and I'll say to anybody who I'm racing against, if you beat me, well done, congratulations, you had the best bird on the day. But every pigeon that I put in to win. So I am very competitive that way. And you're not going to win all the races. We have our fair share of wins. If I'm on a losing streak for a week or two, I just put that little bit of extra effort in. You know, if you're on a losing streak, you don't want to change too much too quickly. You just change small things, increase their feeding, decrease their feeding, less training, more training, you know, little things like that. But yeah, that's what motivates me in the sport is winning. You mean the breeding? People say the breeding is gold and racing is silver. Yes, it is, because you're breeding the winners. But I couldn't just have a stud without racing. So yeah, you know, there's a lot of studs that don't race, but I want to race pigeons. I would give up the stud as long as I could carry on racing pigeons.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you think the hardest part of the sport is at the moment? Not necessarily just from your point of view, but generally.
What, the hardest part in winning or
competing? Yeah, I mean, in the sport as a whole, you know, we face decreasing numbers, but there's still people racing, and you've got bird of prey issues, which I know you've got down there big time. It's all connected with how do you get more people in, which is one of the questions we'll go into later. But for you, you're relatively lucky now that you pretty much eat, live, and breathe pigeons, which is a great situation to be in. But even you, that's hard work. You know, just because you've got the right bloodline doesn't mean anything. You've got to put that work into them to make them perform. And a lot of people, obviously, you know, they have to go out to work, and it seems to be, I think it's harder now to race than it was many years ago, to prey, costs of racing, etc. But so what I'm saying is, not very well, even with the great pigeons you've got, you still got to put the work in. And the hardest part of that is, like you said, consistency. You might be having a few bad weeks. It's knowing what to change, testing. And it's, you know, like with young birds, for instance, like you said, you've only got 8 young bird races. Do you think where you are in the country is an advantage or a disadvantage to you for your pigeons?
When I first brought the Bulks in, my biggest concern with them was predominantly we get headwinds. I wasn't sure whether they was going to be a strong enough pigeon to punch their way through, and obviously being the longer flyer as well, to be able to win the shorter races. But they proved me wrong. You mean slow velocities isn't a problem to them, fast velocities isn't a problem to them. But the biggest problem in the sport, what is it? You mean, yes, bird of prey, they are a big problem in the sport. I don't think they're the only problem in the sport. Clashing. Yeah, you mean there is clashing, and for us, we're the only people, because we're right down the bottom end of Cornwall, coming down through the country. Most other people fly the South Road, which their pigeons are flying up through the country.
Yours are flying across it, really.
And that's yes, I do think that's a big problem for us. And lots of other people in Wales going across to Epsom, flying across, pigeons going up through. Yes, that is a big problem. But I think the biggest problem in the sport is health issues and antibiotics. You know, it's just too readily available. Everybody can get their hands on them. And
it's weakening the...
Unless you know, yeah, I'm sure it is weakening the pigeons. I mean, yesteryear, we used to send pigeons 500 mile and expect them home on the day or the next day. You'd wake up in the morning, you would have 15 pigeons sitting on your loft roof. You very rarely get that these days. If you have a bad race, once those pigeons are, you know, if they don't turn up on the day, they're gone. You get very, very few workbacks. Now, why is that? I mean, I don't know the answer to it. But yeah, I think that's the biggest problem in our sport is the health of the pigeons.
Interesting. I think you're right to a degree, definitely. There's
lots of other things. There's problems in the sport, but I think the health of the pigeons is the biggest thing. I mean, if they're not healthy, they're not coming home.
No.
Again,
No.
you lost.
I view you as one of the nicest people in the sport, and one of the reasons I say that as well is that you are only too happy to give advice to people, and you've done that extensively with my son Zandy, and that's one of the great things about you that you do. For anybody starting up new, is there any advice generally you would give to people starting up? You mentioned about the overcrowding, which all of us at some point have done.
Yeah, that's
definitely, like me personally, I've cut down massively on what I've got, and it's so much better. Zandy's done the same. He's got a hard limit of his team now, and he's seeing the benefits. But is there any advice you would give to people starting new?
A new starter, yeah. Don't get involved with the politics of pigeons. Don't get stock birds.
Well, you don't get involved with the politics. That's one thing you don't do. You're a nice guy. You're very helpful, but
I do. I get involved with the politics of the pigeons within my own organisation.
Yeah,
and I'm not liked for it because I'm outspoken within my own organisation. Anybody else's organisation has nothing to do with me. Posts on Facebook, social media. I don't get involved with other people's beliefs, and you know, it's their organisation. It's up to them to sort it out. You mean, if someone phoned me up and asked my advice, I'd give them my advice, what I think.
Yeah.
But I would never step in and get involved and say, oh, you know, leave it to me. If it was in my organisation, yes, I would. You know, the advice I give fanciers, I mean, I've had 2 text messages this morning from 2 regular people that text me 3 or 4 times a week. You know, what would I do for this? What would I do for that? My only advice is stuff that I'm already doing. You know, that I can't advise on products that I don't use.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I'd only advise and say what I'm doing and what products I use.
One of the other bits of advice you said is for a new starter to not have stock pigeons. Yeah.
A total novice don't want all the hassle of pairing pigeons up, having problems with pairings and young birds, you know, in the nest with coccidiosis and cleanliness, and they're better off having a kit of youngsters or 2 or 3 kits of youngsters from not too many people. Don't have 2 people, you know, 2 pigeons from this one, 2 pigeons from that one. Basically, then you're like a one-loft race where you've got all these pigeons coming in with their own diseases, mixing up. That's asking for trouble. Get as many pigeons off of as fewer people as possible and enjoy them. Fly them and enjoy them. Don't be afraid to ask questions. You know, social media can be very negative, but there's still plenty of people on social media that will give you good advice.
And pick and choose your advice.
Or just go to someone and see if they will give you a bit of advice. There's plenty of top pigeon men out there that will give you advice.
I think you need a filter. You need to do what makes sense to you individually, your own circumstances. People like you will never give you loaded advice, as I call it, like with any ill intention. And you'll get, people, there are good people out there that will share their advice, and it's good advice for sure. Yeah. What do you think needs to change in the sport in the UK specifically?
What needs to change in the sport?
Well, look at it this way, right? I'll give context to that question, I guess. The RPRA memberships dropped massively. It's dropped by 2/3 in the last 30 plus years. And that needs to turn around. There's a tipping point with membership where it won't be economically viable to run it as an organization as it is. And the numbers speak for themselves. Late 80s, when I was a teenager, 60,000 registered members. I thought it was 18,500. I was told a month or so ago that it's a lot lower than that now. And when you start getting to 8,000 to 10,000 people, that comes that tipping point scenario.
Country, yeah, for 8,000 to 10,000 people.
And my take on it, and I've said this before in interviews with it, I don't think you're going to be able to get the mass volume of people you need coming into the sport, racing into their own back gardens, that this sport within the UK specifically needs to turn it around. And it's horrible situation to look at, because it is very negative, and I'm not one to be negative, but there's a realism there that says something radically needs to change to turn things around, because you're not going to get the thousands of people over the next 10 years. You need to have people racing into their own back gardens as your dad used to do. I mean, back when your dad was racing, when you were getting into it, pretty much anywhere in the UK, there were pigeon lofts on every other street, and not that case now for many reasons. Costs, houses people live in, you're not allowed to have this in the gardens, and there's loads of reasons. And I'm still searching for the answers to what can turn it round. I've got, again, on other interviews, I've said I think one-loft races are a way that it can attract new people. You're always going to have people wanting to race pigeons like you do, but it all get condensed.
Yeah. But pigeon men are very generous. If there's anything for charities such as health issues for children, and we give away a lot of pigeons every year. There's a lot of people that have auctions for different charities. But outside of the pigeon world, it's not known.
No.
These things need publicising more than that. I don't know the answers to how to increase the sport. I love the sport. I would recommend it to everybody. I will talk to a total stranger all day long about racing pigeons. I'll bore them to death. But there needs to be more publicity about the joys of racing pigeons. We all share that, whether we get on with this one or that one. We all share that excitement of seeing that pigeon come home.
Yeah, nothing will beat seeing a pigeon coming back from a race.
I don't know about you. If I'm behind 1 week, I still get excited. I might know that I'm behind because our combine is 80 miles long. I still get excited to see those pigeons come in.
Yeah, I haven't raced pigeons in my own right for years, and I haven't got the time, inclination. If I'm honest, the time's the main thing. If I haven't got anything else to do, maybe. But then saying that, for me personally, I've said this before. Maybe I've got softer in my old age because the amount of losses that certainly are around. That's not necessarily something I particularly like. But seeing my son's pigeons come back from a race and and his joy and excitement is you can't beat that feeling, even if they're not your pigeons, just watching them. And I think that's what people outside of pigeons need to, if we can just tap into that, if you could tap into the joy and there's so many emotions in it. Because
the general public are very inquisitive about racing pigeons. When I take my pigeons off training, if there's someone around, 9 times out of 10, they'll come over and want to know a little bit more about racing pigeons.
Mm.
Now, if that was pushed a lot more, publicizing it, maybe those people would take it up. I mean, schools are a good thing. I mean, I know the RPRA are doing things with schools now, but schools, I might be wrong in saying this, but are schools approached? Because there's lots of local fanciers that would help out. It's not always got to come from the RPRA, to buy the loft, to buy the pigeons, for schools to have a racing pigeon loft and compete in their local clubs. But it's instilling it into the younger generation. The younger generation have got their phones and their iPads and, all that technology. It's installing the excitement of racing pigeons at a young age for them then to come into the sport when they leave school and go to work and want a hobby.
The schools thing is the younger people is a longer term thing, in my opinion, because
Definitely.
Ultimately at school age, you've got to persuade mum and dad that they can have something in their, loft in their garden, what have you. I think I've discussed this before as well. I think the RPRA are missing a trick to a degree in that people in their 40s onwards are actually a great target market. Maybe they've got more disposable income, maybe they've got more time, maybe their kids have gone and they're at a loose end. I think that's a market because it's perhaps more accessible, easier to get people involved quicker. Whereas, like me, I had pigeons from the age of 13, come 21, moving around the world, working, whatever, didn't have any for quite a few years. Whereas people in their 40s and 50s, maybe that's a market that needs...
That's a shorter term fix, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, you need the kids. But
yeah.
Again, I've expressed this. I think I've got a 3-step approach. And when I talk about one-off races, we talked about this at Lens before. One-off races are great. I think they're great. But they don't have to be done the same as they're being done at the moment. People can think outside the box. They can be smaller. They can be more localized. Nothing stopping somebody arranging a small one-off race with just 50 pigeons in it, and they get sent with a club. And Zandy was in one with Vincent McConnell, did one a few years ago. £100 in, 40 pigeons, 45 pigeons racing to one section in his loft. It was great. It was a great, and I think one-off races don't have to just be thousands of pigeons competing for relatively high entry fees, because that's a barrier to a lot of people. Mm. And I think there's different ways it can be done. But if you can take the one-off races that operate however they operate, that is a way, I think, of getting the more mass market, mainstream public interested. Because it's very similar to horse racing.
One of the one-loft races this year, no, it's for next year, I believe. You'll probably know which one it is. I can't think off the top of my head which one it is. They're having a juniors race.
Yeah, Northwest. Yeah, it's the Northwest.
Right.
Good luck.
And I think the owner's son is going to run the juniors race, but I'm correct in saying that.
Yeah.
I think that's a fantastic idea, an opportunity to get non-fanciers, younger generation into it. You mean?
Yeah. This is the kind of thing that needs to be done. Northwest have got a great race. Two lofts competing against each other, separate races. Kept their numbers to 400 per loft, kept the numbers manageable, but there's 2 different loft managers for each of the lofts. And again, that's thinking out of the box, thinking of what needs to be done. But if you can get the mainstream more public involved. I took Zandy to, although the race didn't pan out the way it was, I took him to his first one-off race, and now God, the excitement, the day, didn't get a pigeon back on the day, as it happens, first time it's ever happened. That was a baptism of fire for him to watch. But we were back there next morning, 6:15, day 2, start again. Mm. And there were people that weren't pigeon people that had come along. There was thousands of people there. I was sitting in front of a lady that just came to watch it. Nothing to do with pigeons. And then I think if you can get people interested in that, and then a portion of them people will think, you know what? It's not a racehorse. I don't have to have stables. I can have 2, 3, 4, 5 pair of my own pigeons breeding for this. A portion of people will potentially then buy some stock birds to do their own entries. Or they will, I think long term, then they'll come to people like you and whoever else to buy their pigeons to enter in these races themselves. That's a great entry point. And then a portion of them people may think, you know what, I really like this. I want to race pigeons to my own location in my own right. I think that's another opportunity that needs to be opening these one-off races, because it makes more sense to get more people involved, as well as the schools projects and maybe the 40s, 50s projects. But without the numbers keep going down at the moment, something radically needs to change. And I think smaller one-off races, at the end of the day, generally the sport outside of Romania and Poland, outside of China, within Europe, Romania and Poland are increasing. Why is that? Because that population are still interested or used to looking after livestock. Many people have still got livestock in their gardens, chickens, what have you. There's a whole bunch of questions why else it is increasing. But generally the numbers are going down and the amount of one-off races is going up. What's your take on, with that linked in, what's your take on money into the sport? Some people say money kills the sport. I personally believe the sport needs more money into it to make it grow bigger and get more people interested.
Money makes the world go round. There's got to be money in the sport, I believe. It all depends what money you're talking about. You mean some of these racing pigeons you see abroad sell for hundreds of thousands of pounds. I mean, that's
all China influence. I'm not necessarily talking about the big money pigeons. I'm talking about sponsorship. If you look at snooker, you look at darts as a sport, they were dying on their arse before big promoters came in and changed things and pumped money into it.
Yeah, money does make the world go round. You mean, people think money is killing the sport because of some of these big value pigeons. You don't have to spend thousands and thousands of pounds to produce a winner in your stock loft.
Mm.
The hobby is, the sport is, it can be quite expensive. You mean the price of fuel, the price of fuel as well for training,
fuel, corn,
everything, medication. I mean, everything is expensive. But what isn't expensive? How much does it cost to join a golf club?
Yeah, exactly.
You're talking about hundreds of pounds a year just for membership. So no, I don't think money is killing the sport. I think money will keep the sport going.
I think the Chinese influence of prices is a massive, but I actually think every time there's a large sale, that hits the mainstream media.
Yeah,
that's good for it. And
need more publicity on mainstream media.
Yeah, and the idea of, you can't compete against children or grandchildren of them is rubbish. Especially some of the one-off results I've seen. Most one-off winners I've seen are not famous, really expensive parented pigeons. They're not.
Well, we had an ace pigeon in one-loft race. He was a grandchild of New Young Kittel. The winner of the UK Premier, he was a grandchild of Rambo. You're not talking about thousands of pounds worth of pigeons being their parents.
No.
You're talking about a few £100. And that's just to name a few, just to name two.
Mm.
So you don't have to spend big money to still get results.
No, no, you don't. No. I think money needs to be pumped in. There needs to be promotion, and I don't think it hurts. And I think we talked about it in other interviews before. The league system, when it comes to racing, I still think it's ridiculous that somebody coming in who is competing against people who've been doing it for 30 years, and if you're not careful, they'll lose the motivation to keep going on. Why is there no league system? There should be. There's not. Golfers have handicaps, horses have handicaps. Don't get why there can't be a league system. That's the one great thing about one-off races. You're on a level playing field as well. And it's been proven. You look at the stats from that Algarve Golden Race, which is the biggest race in Europe. The winner of that this year was relatively unknown flyer. 25% bulk in it. The parents of that pigeon weren't, they're obviously very good pigeons, but they weren't big name and expensive money pigeons, and it can be done. And that's the argument when people say money's ruining the sport. All these money. I think big sale pigeons are great for the sport, because it's like, you can say to somebody, what's the most expensive racing pigeon they guess, they're blown away by it. That automatically puts the public's mindset into the same as horses.
But a lot of them then think it's expensive to get into racing pigeons, which is expensive enough, but not to that extreme.
Yeah.
That's why I think there should be more publicity about the joys of racing pigeon.
Yeah.
Rather than, you were saying a minute ago, these pigeons, these high value pigeons, they hit the mainstream media. But the joys of racing pigeons don't hit mainstream media. It's all about the high value pigeons. So that's
I know what you're saying. It needs to be told and explained that you don't have to have.
No.
Well, there needs to be examples of a £50 pigeon winning race. It was like that. The winner of the Premier this year. How much would that pigeon have been out the nest?
£50.
There you go. That's what needs explaining. I've got a domain name I've had for years called athletesofthesky.com, and it's still on my list at some point to do like a mainstream promotional thing showing people the joys of it, all different aspects of it. And I think something like that needs doing. I think a video needs producing properly, professionally, showing people, specifically geared to get people interested. There's increasingly more documentaries about pigeons, and there's still that perception issue. There's still, unfortunately, flat cap, whippet perception, and it isn't like that anymore. And like you said, if you can just tap into the essence of the joy of seeing a pigeon that you've trained or that you've bred come back from a race, nothing will beat that, ever. No drug out there will beat that, for me anyway. And I think that if you can just get people to see it, experience it, feel it, then you tap into big potential to get people interested.
Yeah, I mean, you was going on about, you was just saying about, £50 pigeon winning. Next year, there'll be brothers and sisters to that pigeon in the UK Premier one-loft race as venture pigeons. Anybody can buy that pigeon off of Jeremy Davis. Obviously, it'll be first come, first serve, but I'll make sure that there's a pair the same way bred as this year's winner for anybody to buy. I don't know how much Jeremy's going to charge or anything like that, but you could go to someone and buy a half decent, a proven line from quite a few people at not a lot of money and put them into these races if they want to.
I do need to acquire a brother or sister of that pigeon at some point.
There's two in the nest there at the minute. I mean, one of them I've donated to the National Flying Club sale, and the other one I've actually sold to a bloke that's bought quite a few pigeons off of me. It won't get sold. I mean, I'm breeding him 20 youngsters now because he wants to try something a little bit different, thinking outside of the box. I mean, I know it's been tried before, having some 2023 late-breds, and they are late-breds because they've just been rung with 2023 rings. He's going to race them as old birds. So with all these things, you've got to think outside the box. If you have bad young bird season and you haven't got many old birds, pair your pigeons up early. Because if you think about it now, those pigeons have just been rung. So they're December hatched. So January, February, March, April, May, June, July. When we get around to young bird racing, those pigeons would have been 7 months old. If you pair up your pigeons and take them in April, that'll be May, June, July. They're 3 months old. So that's saying you can race a pigeon after 3 months. So that bloke that's had them now, December hatched, January, February, March, April, those pigeons will be 4 months old. So if you have a bad young bird season and you haven't got enough for racing old birds, you could pair them up beginning part of November, race them in April.
It'd be fascinating to see how that pans out. I suspect I know it.
I know people that's tried it, Mark. It works. People
I heard somebody
it.
talking about it in a WhatsApp group. Why don't people do it? Yeah.
You need to train them though when they need to be trained, and you need to pick your days for training, because when you're training in February time, because they need to be trained earlier than your more experienced birds. When you're training in February time, you get a lot of cold mornings, and there's no point putting them up in bad weather. They've got to have a fair crack at the whip. But you start training them early and pick your days. Pick the best days that you can. Train them right up until the first race.
Where's the most, some random questions now to finish up. Where's your favourite place in the world?
Here.
Well, that might be the case.
I love being home. Holiday destination, Vegas. But
Vegas.
If I had to pick one place and never move from there again, I couldn't move away from here.
That's a nice feeling to have. I can't wait to get out of the UK, but yeah, I hate the weather. But your weather's slightly better than down there than up here, so
we get a lot of fog and rain, Mark. It is quite depressing sometimes, but no, I just absolutely love being home with the family and.
Well, you've got the ideal. A lot of people watching this will think you've got the ideal life. You're with your family. You're in a beautiful place in the world, and you deal with your pigeons. That's utopia.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about taking the right risks, isn't it? You know, in business, I've been lucky.
Mm.
You know, the risks I've taken have paid off. Not all of them, but most of them have paid off. And you've got to have a little bit of luck in life. You've got to have a bit of luck in racing pigeons. Not everything is always going to line up for you to win. You know, sometimes you need pigeons putting that extra bit in to be able to win. Other times that it'll line up that it's going to be your race, whatever happens, with wind and weather and even falcons, you know, pushing them offline. You've got to have a little bit of luck in everything in life.
Do you have any interests outside of pigeons?
Not anymore. Pigeons are out my absolute life. You mean you said earlier on about work? Yes, I've got a stud. Yes, I sell pigeons. Predominantly, I'm a racer, but I don't look at any of it as work because I just love doing it.
It's not work if you enjoy what you're doing, eh?
It's not hard work because I enjoy doing it.
Mm. That's great. That's lovely. What does the future hold, pigeon related?
It's not looking good, is it?
No, I didn't mean generally. I meant for you. What are your future goals? What do you see Angwin Family Lofts doing, wanting to achieve, going in the next few years?
Got to do the double on a one-loft race, Mark.
There you go.
I'd love for a brother or sister to the pigeon that won the UK Premier to win another one-loft race. I don't know if it's happened before. If it has, maybe once before. I don't know if it has happened before, but yeah,
Oh,
I would love to get another winner out of the same pairing in another one-loft race, or even the same one-loft race. I mean, 315 miles from a young bird, it's not a task. Some of them are a lot shorter than that. But going back to that one-loft race, the UK Premier, that pairing was specially put together for that one-loft race. You know, it wasn't a pure bulk. It was a Rudy Van Reeth paired to a Hofkins. And the nest pair went in, and the nest pair did well. But that was because it was a 315-mile one-loft race. Some of them were only 235,
yeah.
20. So you've got to think. But yeah, that's my goal, is to produce another winner, one-loft race winner.
I want to see your pigeons racing further afield as well. I think the right pairings, like you said, not necessarily, you know, they've got to be picked like you did for that pair that went into the Premier. I want to see your pigeons going into the Algarve races and further afield. That's something I'd like to see happen, which hopefully we can make happen with some of the plans we've got to get some of your pigeons into some syndicates and stuff. Because I think it's proven they can do it. And like you said, the right pairings, depending on the you know, like those Algarve, the Algarve round races are around the same final distance as the Premier in the UK. So
yeah, it would be good to get them into different one-off races. I mean, they got different conditions. I mean, the weather being the biggest one. I mean, look at the British weather. Look at the weather out in the Algarve. You know, it's two extremes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they can do it. There's no reason why any one-loft race winner in the UK couldn't have won a one-loft race in any other country.
No, I don't think so. And that's what I want to see happen for you next is, like you say, get the double, but get more pigeons out, test them into other one-off races in other countries and what have you. Well, thank you for that. I'm sure people have enjoyed listening to it or watching it, however they choose to consume this podcast. Where can people find out more about you and your pigeons if they want to?
They can go on my website. I mean, I've got a blog there that...
That's angwinfamilylofts.
No, angwinfamilypigeons.com.
Sorry, Angwin. I'll put the link at the end of this as well for people.
Yeah, so there's a website there where... Well, they can just look at my stock birds if they want to. Not every pigeon is on there, but my stock birds are on there. I always sell a few pigeons on there, but they're not always high-priced pigeons. Some of them are, yes, but and also I do a blog because I've got a YouTube channel that I video every single race.
I'll put a link to your YouTube channel as well at the end of this on the post about it, so people can go straight to the YouTube channel as well. But one thing as well to say, and you mentioned it kind of earlier, if people want a kit of pigeons from you, yes, you've got the expensive pigeons, of course, but if people want a kit, they can buy kits of pigeons for around £50 a pigeon.
Yeah.
And
they're no different to what I'm racing now.
No.
You know, in that kit, no, you wouldn't get a child of new young Kittel in it.
No, but what the kits you send out are
but you would get grandchildren.
The same pigeons you sell, you race yourself. Sorry,
exactly the same. If I don't, I mean, obviously I rear a lot more pigeons than what I keep myself. Last year I only had 66 young birds. I promised too many young birds to other people. You know, not only selling them, gifting them as well, and new starters. And
you've gifted a lot of pigeons, probably more than anybody I know.
Probably last year or 2023, I've probably given away 150 pigeons.
Wow,
got to be.
That's amazing.
But it's not always about money. You know, I would like everybody to race my pigeons. Now, everybody's not going to race my pigeons, but not everybody can afford to go out and buy pigeons. But phone me. I mean, I don't want a load of people phoning me up saying, "Oh, can you do me 6 pigeons?" And
no, the takeaway point though is that people can be racing kits of your pigeons for 50 quid a pigeon, which
yeah,
the level of quality you've got is bargain territory, real bargain.
Yeah, and you know, their grandparents I've paid thousands of pounds for.
Yeah,
and the pigeons' parents would probably make £1,000 or £2,000 in auctions.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a way of getting relatively close bloodlines that are still winning at a cheap price.
That's great, mate. Well, thank you. I'll put the links up at the end of this video for people to go to. And thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome. Nice chatting with you.
You've been listening to the RPI Podcast. Check out more episodes at podcast.racingpigeoninternational.com.